Live at wsmn.live.
USA Radio News, I'm Ron Warner. Frustrations continue to build as close to 92,000 NIPSCO customers remain without power in northwest Indiana. Perry Williams has more.
This resident says she's been without electricity for more than a week.
I've lived here 75 years since the day I was born. I've never seen nothing like this. This is crazy.
In Gary, a mobile food pantry served nearly 150 people and ran out of food and sent others to a distribution site in Lake Station. Utility officials hope to have power restored in Gary and Hammond by Friday, and Munster and Highland may not get restored until next Tuesday.
The Los Angeles City Council is repealing a homeless camping ban in Hollywood, Echo Park, and Silver Lake.
Councilmember Hugo Soto Martinez, who represents the area, has urged the vote, calling the ban ineffective. He says displacing homeless people doesn't find them housing. He also argues it makes it tougher for them because they lose their belongings, get fined, or get arrested. Tracy Park is one of the 3 council members who voted no on the repeal. She argues anti-camping zones are an effective tool to keep areas clear after people are offered beds and services. Soto Martinez says he believes this is the first instance of an encampment ban being rescinded. I'm Daniel Martindale.
Amazon is significantly expanding its Prime Air drone delivery service with plans to reach nearly 500 cities and towns across the U.S. by the end of the year.
The company says customers can receive eligible items, including groceries, medications, and household goods, in as little as 30 minutes. After an order is placed, packages weighing up to 5 pounds are loaded onto autonomous drones that use onboard sensors and obstacle avoidance technology to navigate safely to customers' homes. The drones identify a safe drop zone before delivering the package and returning to base. The expansion marks a major step in Amazon's push for faster delivery service. I'm Monica Nelson.
From America's News Network, USA Radio News.
Maybe this is you too. There's enormous frustration right now with healthcare costs. It is amazing. Healthcare costs for families in the last 20 years have almost tripled, and it just keeps getting worse. All this to say, this is why MediShare is so in demand right now. People are looking for alternatives, and MediShare is proven. You can save thousands of dollars a year and actually like it more. Over 1 million Americans are now part of healthcare sharing, and MediShare is the gold standard. It's trusted. It works. It's been helping people save money and have peace of mind now for 30 plus years. It's not some big impersonal thing either. It's a community of people like you helping each other. So yeah, if you're frustrated too, here's your chance to make a refreshing change. You'll notice the difference as soon as you call. They're easy to talk to. You can get a price within 2 minutes. Here is the number. Call 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
Senator Rick Scott says President Trump may have to follow through on his threat to strike Iranian infrastructure if Iran continues firing on ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Scott says Trump has given diplomacy a chance, but Iran has walked away. He predicts the U.S. could take stronger action within the next month, while stressing that Iran must not be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. Wyoming Republicans have chosen Congresswoman Harriet Hagman as their nominee for U.S. Senate. Hagman defeated 4 other candidates in Tuesday's primary and was endorsed by President Trump. She first gained national attention in 2022 when she defeated Republican Liz Cheney in Wyoming's lone House seat. Hagman now advances to November's general election to succeed retiring Republican Senator Cynthia Loomis. There's concern that Holocaust survivors and their families in New York may be getting scammed.
Governor Kathy Hochul has issued a notice to survivors and their families about a group calling itself the Jewish Holocaust Claim Center, which is sending unsolicited notices to people and urging them to submit claims for compensation. New York State says its Department of Financial Services has not been able to verify the legitimacy of the group, adding a fake website has since been removed. Hochul says scamming and stealing from Holocaust survivors is the lowest of lows, saying the state's Holocaust Claims Processing Office, created in 1997, has already helped recover over $184 million in assets to victims' families. In New York, I'm Natalie Migliori.
I'm Ron Warner, USA Radio News.
You can help put vets to work by donating your car, truck, or van. Your donation will directly support programs to help vets find jobs or even start their own business. Donate today for fast, free pickup of your vehicle. Call 800-209-4580 for 24-hour response. Call 800-209-4580. That's 800-209-4580. 880.
Dependable Lock Service is your source for replacement car keys, custom safes from Liberty Safe, and so many more lock and key services. With over 30 years of experience in lock and key industry, there's nothing Dependable Lock Service can't do for you. Whether you're looking for duplicate automotive chip keys, rekeying commercial and residential locks, or custom safe building, we've got you covered. Call 603-886-0559. Nashua's Dependable Lock Services 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
The sky's not the limit, it's just the beginning. I'm Ed Mullen from Nashua Aerial Advertising. There's no better way to advertise your business and or message than high in the sky. How can you make your advertising budget work for you? By putting your ads up where they'll stand out. The sky is an uncluttered, impressive venue. You can put your message over a region or location to target your desired demographic. Put your ads where they're needed. We provide coverage over communities through Merrimack Valley, Greater Nashua, Manchester, Lowell, and points throughout South Central New Hampshire and North Central Mass. Summertime beaches, sporting events, races, fairs, and festivals are all ready-made for banner telling. For more information, please visit us online at NashuaAerialAdvertising.com. And remember, the sky's not the limit, it's just the beginning.
Tired of wondering where your money really goes? At Mammoth Nation, we built what was missing. The America First Marketplace. Every brand we feature is 100% American owned and operated, rigorously vetted for their values and committed to supporting our Constitution, law enforcement, and the American dream. When you shop with us, your dollar stays in the neighborhood, supporting families, veterans, and charities like Folds of Honor. No more sending your hard-earned money overseas to the companies that don't respect you here. Your dollar reflects your values. Your dollar, your values. Your America. Join Mammoth Nation today and be part of building a patriot economy by going to TruckersUnitedForFreedom.com affiliate page and hit that link. American built, America strong. Mammoth Nation.
The views and opinions of the following show do not reflect those of WSMN, its owners, and/or associates.
Welcome to the Common Sense Conservatives, a political discussion group about current events and other government-related matters every Wednesday evening from 7 to 8 p.m. Right here on WSMN 1590 AM, WSMN 95.3 FM, and streaming live on wsmn.live. Making sense of the inverted reality we are subject to every day, the Common Sense Conservatives are here to help bring you back to reality. Now, your hosts, Chris Wyatt, Todd McKinley, and John Gorman.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Common Sense Conservatives. It is another Wednesday night, and we are at it. So, $40 trillion, gentlemen. We have hit $40 trillion in national debt. Can you believe it?
Slow clap. No. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And yet we re-elect the same old people over and over and over again, expecting a different result. You know, it's our own fault in a lot of ways, folks.
It's terrible. Chris, how are things going out there in South Africa?
Well, it's another day. Busy as always. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. See and hear you fine. Actually, this is the best reception we've had of you so far since you've been there.
All right. Well, it's actually got pretty good internet tonight, but couldn't see if my microphone was recording. But yeah, things are fine. Very interesting. I found myself yesterday after a game drive rushing to help put out a bushfire that threatened a retirement village in a remote area. The flames were moving quite fast, and the wind was whipping around about 30, 40 knots, changing directions multiple times. We managed to get the fire out and save the retirement village and all the elderly there. However, a nearby lodge on a different hill got trapped. People got there in time to try to put it out, but unfortunately, thatched roofs, and those thick thatched roofs, once an ember gets inside those thatched, it's almost impossible to get out. And unfortunately, both of those buildings were completely lost. But there were no loss of life, no injuries, and there was heroic efforts on the part of people fighting the fire, Black and white South Africans, and I jumped in and was part of it. Been a long time since I'd fought a bushfire, but those skills come right back to you. Other than that, it's been pretty interesting. I mean, that's I'd say that was pretty interesting in and of itself. But it's been a fascinating journey thus far. South Africans, pretty amazing people, and it's great to see their resilience.
we've got another hat for you to wear, huh? We got to get you a fireman's hat from around here
Right.
somewhere. What the heck? You just jump right on in and start putting out fires. Good on you, man.
Well, I did intend to volunteer to be a volunteer fireman. It's a problem we have in America. Many of our fire departments are volunteer, money raised locally by events and supported without taxation many times by the communities. And the thing is that volunteerism is dying in America, sadly, and that's one of the areas most affected is volunteer fire departments, which many of America's communities, particularly peri-urban and rural communities, rely on extensively to protect their homes and their businesses. And unfortunately, people aren't volunteering, and these volunteer fire departments are forced to close or consolidate, making the distance to come and put out fire and save your loved ones further and further away in many instances. And we're not exempt from that in Pennsylvania. So I intended to become a volunteer fireman, kind of like inspired by Don Bolduc becoming a reserve police officer. Unfortunately, my hip became a bit of a problem, but I talked to someone recently. They said, it's fine. You could drive the fire truck. You don't have to get out and lift the hoses. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what? Maybe volunteer fireman is in my future still.
There you go.
That'd be pretty awesome. You're right. That's how we keep taxes down and support our communities is by volunteering. So, Todd, I'm thinking I'm going to slide it over to you because we have a guest you want to bring in.
Absolutely. We got David Sale, returning guest. He's known as the Property Patriot, defending rights, protecting property, standing for the Constitution. David has a lot of things he's going to talk about: property rights, just compensation. Basically, he's a citizens advocate, and he's also, he's hired by the local, I think Jefferson County, Tennessee government to be an advocate on their behalf as well in Nashville. He has a lot of stuff he wants to talk about. Some things that deals with property rights, just compensation, as I mentioned, and of course, civil asset forfeiture. If we could bring him in, that'd be great.
It actually would be great if we could. That was a very nice introduction, by the way. However, David disappeared on us. He was there. I promise you he was there, and I sent him a message in private chat, assuring him that we're going to bring him in right after the top of the hour break and a quick go around here. Maybe you want to give him a text message, and I see you're doing that. So, see if you can shoot back in. Maybe you just got a bad connection or something.
Yeah, so as we bring him back on, I'd like to ask the Colonel, you said you got another couple weeks over there, and of course, now you're a firefighter again. What are some things you're seeing over there in South Africa right now that maybe has changed since the last time you've been over there?
Well, usually when I come over, I have to say that I see the infrastructure getting worse, but I've got to say that this time, perhaps because it's an election year, the municipal elections nationwide occur on the 4th of November, just the day after our elections in the States. I'm seeing, by and large, the roads I've traveled on have been in amazing condition, and some well maintained, others being repaired, which is probably an election year thing. I'd say that I've been pleasantly surprised by that. Also, some of the rhetoric that you typically hear politicians spewing seems to have been toned down a little bit this time around. Maybe I'm just being overly sensitive, but I certainly pay attention to that. Another thing I would say is that despite those good signs, the country is definitely on the wrong path. It's a shame to see what's happening here, the discrimination, the isolation of ethnic groups and racial minorities by laws that the government has passed to discriminate against them. It's really sad to see that. It prevents people from flourishing, and it's no different than what happened under apartheid. The only thing is there's a different oppressor today than there was then. And the world is ignoring it. When under apartheid, the world was very much attuned to what was happening in South Africa. But today, the world is ignoring it because the people being oppressed aren't their favorite group, and therefore it's just ignored. But there's many things about South Africa quite fascinating. I actually was on a game drive before the fire, and I saw many different forms of wildlife: kudu, blesbok, golden hyenas, not hyenas, golden wildebeest, blue wildebeest, wrangler wildebeest, impala, hippos. It was buffalo, Cape buffalo, quite a number of species, and it was fascinating to see. South Africa is an amazing place. People should come if they get a chance to visit and spend a little bit of money here and enjoy themselves. But it's a place that has a lot of challenges, and hopefully those challenges will get ironed out in the future. But I don't hold my breath because politicians run the show just like they do elsewhere, and politicians are not always responsive to the wants, needs, and desires of those who need their lives to improve. And that's a big problem here. Poverty is widespread. it's much more widespread than it was even under the National Party, which was the architect of the apartheid era. The number of people living in poverty was just a third what it is today. Things have gotten demonstrably worse. And it's not because South Africa doesn't have resources. South Africa is blessed with massive mineral resources of all natures. It has a limited agricultural potential based on how much land is arable, but farmers have taken dry desert land, irrigated it, turned it into, arable soil. And therefore, its agricultural sector is important, its mineral sector is important. And once upon a time, it batted above its weight on the world stage, but South Africa is well below its weight on the world stage today. Perhaps that will change in the future, but I can't hold my breath on that.
I think John's got him backstage. Is that right, John?
I got I'll try to add him in. I got a black screen. I don't know if it's going to work or not. If not, I put the number in the chat.
There we go.
There he is.
There we go. David, hey, welcome to the show. We've already did a great introduction. Of course, the Colonel was giving us a rundown of South Africa and the current situation. But introduce yourself to everybody. Remind everybody who you are, and we'll jump right into the good interview here.
Thanks, Todd. I'm David Seal. I'm a property rights activist located in East Tennessee. And my new podcast will be called the Property Patriot. So that's our, in addition to all that, I'll probably talk about the lobby work I do for the county government and the lobby work I do with other activists on property rights and probably a lot of other things. So I'm looking forward to the show. It's always good to see you all.
Absolutely. Appreciate you. Well, what are some of the projects that you're working on? I know you said you had some legislation down in Nashville that you wanted to discuss. Tell the audience a little bit about that, and we'll get into some questions here in just a second.
You had prompted talk a little bit about civil asset forfeiture. I'd like to address that.
There we go, if we could.
Yeah, and we've got 3 bills we're working on. One deals with airport authorities and their use of eminent domain. Another bill deals with data centers. We believe, and a lot of people that follow me believe that eminent domain should not be used to acquire property for data centers. And then the third bill that we're working on is still under construction, and it's going to be a bill that will describe a better process and better notice for people who might be the subject of eminent domain property takings. So those 3 are in the grinder, and I've got some legislation I'm working on for the Jefferson County, Tennessee government. And just for disclosure, I work for them as a lobbyist. I think this is my 4th year officially working for them as a lobbyist. And we deal with, in my capacity as a lobbyist for the Jefferson County government, we deal with county issues. And that's a short rundown of what we do.
There we go. Well, if we could, let's unpack the data center bill that you're working on, because that's a hot topic right now, if we could.
Sure. What we've noticed in the state of Georgia is that multiple property owners, when I say multiple, at least 330 just south of the Tennessee border, are under siege from the power company down there to take property for infrastructure for a data center. Now, we probably can't stop property takings for infrastructure in the state of Tennessee, but what we can do is stop the direct taking of property for data centers proper. So if you have property and you want to sell it to a company that builds and installs and operates data centers, that's your business. But we don't think condemning authorities of any kind, utilities included, should be able to take property for a data center. And we know we have to have data centers because what we're doing right here on this program is routed through a data center, and our cell phones are routed through a data center, and our computers and our banking and everything else is routed through data centers. We're not trying to stop data centers. We're trying to create a situation where government and condemning authorities respect property rights.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll turn it over to the Colonel for some questions if he has any, because I know he's going to drop off after the hour there. Go ahead, Colonel.
Well, I'm a bit tired. I might not make it for the full hour. Yeah, because it is, of course, about 1:21 in the morning here, this side of the world. So, David, you talk about eminent domain and protecting people's rights. This is a big concern here in South Africa, where the government recently, last year, passed legislation authorizing the national, the provincial, and the local municipal governments to expropriate property without compensation, and they don't have to give any justification whatsoever. Now, it's about property. That's an important distinction. I think a lot of South Africans still struggling with that. It's not land, although land is the excuse used for it, restitution of land, but that has been dealt with in the past. And so this law, in my view, is morally bankrupt. It will allow local officials to take your property, your business, your cars, your Krugerrands, your bank accounts, your retirement accounts, your apartments, your homes, or your land without any justification whatsoever. This is a very scary thing. Now, in America, even we've had abuse of eminent domain. I saw in Connecticut years ago where entire neighborhoods were wiped out so that casinos could be built, claiming it was in the public interest. I mean, most of us think of eminent domain as a justifiable means on occasion to build infrastructure like reservoirs behind dams or railroads across the country. But when people are evicted from their home that they've been in their family for 150 years, historic home, because someone wants to build a business park, casino, it's not really in the public interest. And it's quite frightening what authorities can do. And the power now given to officials in South Africa is frightening. In the U.S., we've also had abuses of eminent domain, have we not?
Yeah, in fact, since you brought up the state of Connecticut, I'll mention something that happened in Connecticut in 2004. There was a case in the Supreme Court called Kelo versus New London, Connecticut. And the holding in that case was that you don't have to take property just for public use. If you're a condemning authority, you can actually take property for private economic development. And that is the standard in the United States, except for states that have added protection. And Tennessee is one of the states that have added protection so that you can't just take property for any purpose whatsoever. What we have in Tennessee is a law that says basically you can take property for public use, being defined as something that is non-private and not for private gain or use, with 5 exceptions. And those exceptions kind of remind me of what you were talking about in South Africa. The exceptions that we make for that for private use are utilities, rail, things that are incidental to public use, housing authorities, and transportation. Those are the main ones that we make exceptions for. And obviously, if we didn't have eminent domain, we couldn't have roads. And if we didn't have eminent domain in a few rare circumstances, we couldn't have power lines or water lines or like you were saying, reservoirs. There's a time and place for it in extreme cases. Granted, it should be rare, but there are cases where eminent domain is necessary. And what we're trying to do here in Tennessee is just rein it in and try to work on compensation. So sometime during this conversation, I'd like to discuss with your listeners about what authority airports have to take property and deal with the compensation on that, because we're actively working on a bill on that exact topic.
Well, you mentioned also Connecticut, and that's a frightening thing. And that's what I was referring to, I believe, was the case in which they can actually take it for economic development. I mean, that can be liberally applied. Anytime somebody wants to build a shopping center, well, it's economic development. Or somebody wants to build a factory and they covet your land that your family's owned for 180 years, you could lose it. That's pretty frightening. Look, I mean, as I think you've just restated what I sort of said, is that we all understand that eminent domain is necessary for a functioning society from time to time. But just because someone gets a whim to build a property or they cover your land, that's a pretty frightening prospect. But that is a real reality, is it not?
It is a reality. And 43 states so far have imposed, either through their constitutional amendments or through statutes, to protect property and only have it taken for public use, or a few rare exceptions like in Tennessee. There are 7 states that I may stand to be corrected here, but I believe there are 7 states where condemning authorities can take for any purpose whatsoever. And I would think that Connecticut, New York would probably be in that category.
at some point, I mean, is there not a question here, perhaps? I mean, from a layman's perspective, maybe there isn't, but is there not a question here of unreasonable search and seizure? I mean, we're protected, I believe, under the Fourth Amendment from unreasonable search and seizure. And I would argue that taking someone's property in Connecticut to build a casino is unreasonable seizure. And it's obviously not asset forfeiture because they're going to give you something. You may not agree that it's equitable, but the point is that it seems to me that, building a reservoir or a railroad or a highway seems reasonable as long as it's not done intentionally to harm someone. It's done for the benefit of the public good. But again, it seems to me to be unreasonable and a violation of the Fourth Amendment, if maybe I'm wrong about this, when they take it for a casino or for a shopping mall.
I agree that it is a form of seizure, and I would agree that it would be a Fourth Amendment violation if it were just seized for that purpose.
All right. Well, I will graduate from the Wyatt Law School later tonight. Now that I'm on track. So, David? You talk about airfields, and of course, we have airstrips and airfields all over the country. One of the largest aviation sectors, if not the largest on the planet. Is this a major issue for land being taken for airfields? Is that something you want to discuss?
It's certainly a major situation if you own property in the shadow of an airport and they're getting ready to expand. It's certainly a big deal to you if you're in that situation. So here in Tennessee, we have two situations. We have certain airports organized in such a way that they have the power of eminent domain independently if they want to expand their facilities. The other possibility is that the local airport, local to me, relies on a city government or a county government to do their taking for them. In other words, they don't have the authority on their own to take, but the city that either appoints their board or governs them in some way would have that authority. So the legislation that we're proposing doesn't stop any of that. The legislation would simply address a list of damages that one would suffer if the airport were to take your property. And by the way, Colonel, when they take your property, they're not going to usually build another terminal. They're not usually going to build a control tower or something like that. They're going to put private businesses on it, hotel chains, car rental companies, parking garages, distribution centers, and on and on and on, all private. So we feel like since the taking is for a private use, there should be better compensation for the property owner. Because, Colonel, if you lose your property to an airport, you lose all the future gains that you will ever have in that property. You could keep it another 10 years and maybe double the value of the property, maybe double how much you could get for it. You're asked to give all that up, and when you drive by, see a distribution center or a major hotel chain on the property you used to own. So what we're trying to do is just address the just compensation part of the taking. And what we're talking about, Colonel, is that you would be compensated for moving expenses. You would be compensated for any lost wages or lost profits if you had an in-home business, and you could present evidence to the court and get that money back. Interest rates. If you have a 2.5% interest rate and you have to move across town and get a 6 or 7% interest rate, that's financial damage. So we have a provision in there for that. So we sat down in the city of Alcoa a few months ago and listed every way in which property owners could be damaged if the airport took their property, and we constructed a compensation bill around that.
Well, it's interesting you say that, but I mean, there's other considerations too, and I don't know if this comes into play, but it puts me in mind of something I used to watch. One day Jed was out shooting at some food, and up came a bubbling crude oil, that is Texas tea. Next thing you know, Jed's a millionaire. Folks said, move away from there to Beverly Hills. My point being, what about what's under the soil? What if, in fact, you've got some massive deposit of something that the world wants and needs, that future income. Is that a consideration when they do this eminent domain, or what you guys are trying to protect?
Absolutely. I think it's that. In fact, that's a good point. I hadn't even thought of it, but Colonel, if you look at geography locally, we're sitting on the largest zinc deposit known on planet Earth right here in East Tennessee. And specifically, that zinc deposit is probably under me in the city of Jefferson City and the town of Newmarket and Strawberry Plains. All of these places have the purest known zinc in the world. So theoretically, if you're next to an airport and you own your underground mineral rights, you're going to lose that when you lose your property. And when you lose your property, there again goes any future claim or any future capital gain you might have in that property.
Well, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. You know, here in South Africa, they have this bizarre concept that the property owners don't own what's under the soil, only what appears above ground, which to me is just an alien concept. In America, normally you own everything, what's on, over, or under it, unless your mineral rights have been retained by a previous owner or you sell them off to someone. And so that's a very frightening prospect. And I didn't even think about zinc. I was thinking of coal, because coal is also, coal is big in Appalachia. And West Virginia, Southeast Ohio, Western Pennsylvania, these are major deposits, and it also runs down your direction. That's what I was thinking of. But I mean, it's there has to be a consideration. If you're going to come take my land and use it for an airfield or whatever purpose you want to, what about those $8 billion of recoverable minerals that are sitting under my 3,000 acres? I want compensation for that, not just the value of upland.
Right. I agree with that 100%. There comes a time when you're writing legislation, sometimes you can get major things like that through and sometimes you can't. We ran this bill last year and had a provision in it so that the property owner would need to be compensated at 150% of appraisal. And we lost the bill in committee over that. And we've made some adjustments this year, and we're going to bring the bill back with new sponsors, and we'll see how it goes.
You mentioned losing that bill. Is there, generally speaking, opposition from politicians about protecting rights like this, or are there vested interests usually that come into play, and maybe somebody's hoping to gain something from allowing eminent domain to remain and not protect property owners?
Well, keep in mind, Colonel, that all we were doing was running a compensation bill, not a you can't take it by eminent domain bill. And at one time, I met in one of the senator's office who sponsored with all 5 airport CEOs in the state of Tennessee. And when I got to committee, the governor of Tennessee, through the Department of Economic and Community Development, sent a taxpayer-funded lobbyist liaison to testify against me. So we not only had the airport authorities against us, we had the governor's staff through the Department of Economic and Community Development saying that if our bill were to pass, it would drive the airline prices up, and they testified to that. And my argument to that is, number one, it wouldn't do that, but if it did do that, it would be justified because the property owners are going to lose enormously. If you had another 15 cents for an airline ticket, it would certainly be worth it.
Well, I would say that the federal government interfering in the merger of Spirit and JetBlue did more to raise airline ticket prices than someone not taking my farm to build an airport. I mean, the federal government's interference in the aviation sector has a far bigger impact on the price of tickets than it does that situation. That'd be my argument.
Colonel, I'm writing this down. That's a really good argument.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, they prevented, and now Spirit has gone bankrupt because they couldn't sustain themselves, whereas JetBlue is a very healthy airline that was going to incorporate the routes, for the most part, didn't overlap, and it would have made JetBlue Spirit merger a much stronger airline. But instead, now we've got 1,000 people jobless, and we've got politicians who claim they protect the consumer, and all they've done is screw us. Once upon a time when Herb Kelleher founded Southwest Airlines, and in the interest of full disclosure, I've been a Southwest Airlines shareholder for over 30 years. When he founded the airline, because I believe in Herb Kelleher, he's long since retired. When he founded, it was a low-cost airline. It took care of Americans, didn't have assigned seats. You never paid for bags. Now it's America's largest airline, and the prices are just as outrageous as United. In fact, American Airlines actually has cheaper tickets sometimes than Southwest does, and now they charge for bags. My point is that the government's intrusion into the aviation sector plays a far bigger role in screwing us out of it. Not to mention that, David, if you look at your ticket, most people don't look closely at the ticket. A lot of times there's more in taxes and airport fees than the actual amount of money that goes to the airline. It's pretty frightening. You're working in a sector in which we're trying to constrain government in its role in one way or another. And I think that's an important consideration. Do you take comfort in what you're doing from a standpoint of protecting Americans and ensuring that the constitutional rights are defended from an aggressive government?
Absolutely. I thrive on it. I've got 2 grandkids. I want them to grow up in a nation like I grew up in, and I want their rights to be protected, and I want to promote constitutionality in every form of government, state, local, and federal. Absolutely.
Well, I think that's something that a lot of people lose sight of, especially today with this bizarre love affair, particularly amongst those under the age of 35 who've obviously been too fat, too dumb, and too happy because they never struggled or suffered. They seem to think that democratic socialism is a great path and government control. I think that those of us, I think the 2 of us call ourselves gray beards, looking at our beards, literally gray beards. But I think the gray beards need to stand strong and stand tall and point out the fallacy of government taking care of you and how it's important to constrain government and make sure that the people in government are servant leaders who meet our needs. We put them there for our collective needs, and they should be doing that. And that includes protecting property rights and not just frivolously taking advantage of things like eminent domain to defraud people of their property.
Yeah, and it's a common conversation for us activists when we get together in Nashville to talk about the role that government plays in protecting us. And our laws in Tennessee on property are so loosey-goosey that they fail sometimes to protect us. And we feel like it is our job as activists to try to do everything we can while we're breathing on this earth to tighten those laws up and change it so that they actually protect people rather than protecting special interests. And as you know, special interests carry a lot of weight in government wherever they are. And a lot of times what we have to do is overcome that. And we work hard at it.
Well, it's been a while since I think we last chatted with you. And of course, viewers come and go and listeners come and go. And I suspect we have some new listeners that may not have been with us last time. What is for you in the role that you play doing this been the biggest challenge historically? Is it getting attention? Is it raising funds? Is it achieving outcomes? What is the thing that really you, I don't want to say struggle with, because I'm sure you're very good at what you do, but what's the thing that's been the biggest challenge?
Well, I'm gonna qualify my answer by saying we've already got 4 eminent domain bills passed, the largest of which dealt with housing authorities. We've got a bill passed last year authorizing school boards to have an opening prayer. That was my bill that I wrote. We've had homeschool sports bills. You name it. We've got a good track record of getting things passed. Challenging though is the biggest challenge is dealing with special interest, and I'll have to say, unfortunately, sometimes our own governor's staff is the ones that come in and cause the most trouble. For example, a few years ago, I was working on a bill with the late Senator Nicely to have our school superintendents elected rather than appointed. And of course, all the opposition came from government. There were no citizens, that objected to that. And one of the reasons that we've got some of the wokeism in our schools and some of our school systems is the fact that we have an unaccountable, unelected bureaucrat that runs schools in the state of Tennessee. And believe it or not, the bill that I'm referring to would have given local communities a choice of either having appointed or elected. And if the county commission chose to appoint, that would be the way we've been doing it since 1992. If they decided they wanted an elected school superintendent, they could have that. So it was a permissive, but even with it being permissive, we still caught fire from the state government on this and from special interest groups that just want to keep the left-leaning ideology in schools.
Well, speaking of schools, you mentioned school prayer and getting that allowed. It's to me an odd situation. You have, of course, in the political left, this nonsense that was forced down our throats. But for those who take the time to read our founding documents, they'll understand that faith was a key part of the founding of this republic. Also, there's no mention of separation of church and state anywhere in the Constitution. It doesn't exist. Yet that people try to use as an excuse to keep prayer out of schools in a largely Christian nation. I assume you're laughing because I've hit the nail on the head.
I'm laughing because the separation of church and state is a myth that these people perpetuate based on a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to the Danbury church. So, Danbury Baptist Association. So, basically what Jefferson was saying to them, we're not going to interfere with your religious practices. They were worried to death that the federal government was going to impose some sort of a state religion or that sort of thing. And Jefferson just wrote back to reassure them, we're going to build a wall of separation between, the church and the state, in a sense that we're not going to interfere with you. Not that you have to whitewash the entire federal or state government of religious beliefs or religious expression. That's ludicrous, and our Supreme Court has ruled that it's ludicrous over and over and over and over. And I can probably name 9 cases where they've done that.
Well, they continue. The left continues. I mean, that's the sort of nonsense that was taught to me in school, is the separation of church and state. But when I read these documents, I see no such thing whatsoever. Of course, it came about, as you said, in a letter that Jefferson said to reassure people they could practice their faith without interference from the government. Right. Yet we have, in God we trust, on our currency. We have faith throughout our government, and we have to fight to practice our faith because of these secularists, these leftist, hedonist, satanic lunatics. I hope I'm laying it on heavy enough, because I think I'm describing them. Their objection to God, Christians, Muslims, Jews all believe in a deity. What is their problem with that? It's you don't have to answer that question. It's just kind of it's a rhetorical question. It's quite disturbing to see. But you successfully fought to get prayer allowed in school, and then congratulations. I'm sure that many families, parents across the state are grateful for your efforts.
Prayer in school board meetings, not prayer in school itself. So,
I'm sorry. School board meetings. That's right. You did say that last time. My apologies. Yeah.
That's perfectly okay. But here's why we brought the bill. This is really important. We brought the bill because half of the school system attorneys were buying into this false narrative about separation of church and state. Oh, you can't pray in a school board meeting. There might be a student in the gallery that hears it. Okay. That hasn't stopped the county commission, the state legislature, or any other board or any other court from having prayer to start a proceeding.
Right.
The fact that a student might be present is absolutely irrelevant. And then you had another group of people who have paid attention to the cases that I would cite, like Espinoza, Carson, Kennedy, all these cases that uphold religious freedom that have been decided by the Supreme Court since 2014, that you can have prayer in meetings as long as you don't impose it on someone or, try to force them to participate or follow your religion. You can have prayer in public meetings, school board meetings included now, and our bill clarified that.
No, that's great. And I recall that now that you corrected my error there. But it goes back to the point here that it takes folks, good people more character and standing, to be prepared to stand up and defend our rights, because too many people are just busy with their lives looking the other way. And before you know it, they've come for your property, for your guns, for your kids, and government's out of control. And I would argue that before the election in 2024, our federal government was out of control, and it may still be out of control in many ways, but at least we may have clawed back a little bit of something. We'll see where it goes from there. Do you ever feel that we've gotten very far away from the concept of what the Founding Fathers meant for the Constitution here in the 21st century?
Unfortunately, I think we get a little bit further from it every day, just because we haven't been able to put what I would consider an adequate amount of civics education into our schools. So one of the bills that I worked on last year that we got all the way through the House Education Subcommittee, through the House Full Education Committee, through the Senate Education Committee. We got a bill through last year that would require new teachers applying for certification in the state of Tennessee to pass the same civics test we give high school students. And of course, the Department of Education fought us on that, saying that it was going to cost an enormous amount of money to do that, even though we can hand them a link on their laptop computers that we issue and have them pass the test. Well, we can do that with a teacher applicant as well. Oh, they said, you'll discourage teachers from getting into the teaching profession. So we're going to try it again this year, and we're going to restructure it so that it doesn't have the same fiscal note that it had last year. We're going to try to get the bill all the way to the floor in the House and Senate. All in the world it will do is just require teachers to pass a civics test as a condition of certification.
Right, and you don't even put a number on it. You just say pass, period. That's it. You don't say you must get 100 or whatever. Yeah.
No, there was a number on. We had put 70%. Okay.
Well, that's basic across the board. I think 70% passing rate.
That's right, and that's I think now in school 60% is passing.
In some place, yeah, you're right. Yep, that is true.
Right, but we put 70% on it, and 70 out of 100 questions is what it specified. But I submit this to you, Todd, as a school board member. If you had a teacher applicant who was able to take this test multiple times and had an open book study guide and they couldn't pass the test, do they really belong in the classroom?
Yeah, that's a major problem right there. If you were scrutinizing every answer and say, you must get 100, or something like that, that would be a bit much because people miss stuff, people forget things. I understand that, but a 70 is reasonable in my book.
Right, and just for disclosure here, I was a public school teacher for 32 years.
Right.
And
yep.
I taught a technical subject and career and technical education, and it was nothing unusual for students to come to me and want to have discussions about civics and government and this sort of thing. And I said, well, you need to have that discussion with your history teacher or your civics teacher or your social studies teacher. And they said, we're just not covering it. And I believe it. They just
right. And you did a lot with the Medal of Honor Society, if I remember correctly as well, right?
2014, one of the proudest moments of my life to get certified in the Medal of Honor Character Development Program.
Absolutely.
Well, I would argue, gentlemen, that I don't want anyone teaching in a public school that doesn't understand there's three branches of government, what the role of the federal, state, and local government is, and understand that things like the Electoral College and why it exists and why states have primacy, at least they're supposed to under the Constitution, and that's why the state legislatures elected the senators, because that was the body that represented states, and understands these things, particularly after 2000 and the hanging chads and the old Al Gore won the election because he had more votes nonsense. There needs to be, even if you're a biology teacher and a music teacher or, the typing teacher in school, you need to have a basic understanding of how our system works. You are a representative as a teacher of that system. And when a child comes to you and asks you a basic question about how our country is supposed to work, you should be articulate enough to explain that to them and not have to be the political science or the social studies teacher. That would be my argument. I would think just like those who get a liberal arts education have certain requirements to have all these basic fields of knowledge, I would think that any teacher should have the obligation and responsibility to at least understand the basics of our system from a civic standpoint. That'd be my position. I'm going to guess you agree with me.
I would like to tell you a story about the handing out of constitutions at Jefferson County High School, if you could give me 2 minutes to do that.
Go ahead.
Students are under strict rules not to be in the wrong part of the building at the wrong time. It's something that we do just as a safety precaution. So if you're supposed to be in your biology class over in the biology wing, or your English class, you're certainly not supposed to be in a shop area or in an athletic area or somewhere else. So I came back from lunch one day and the kid is in the hallway. He's the only one, and this is a hallway that's 200 feet long. And he's looking around like he's almost like he's about to do a drug deal, and he's trying to hide from everybody. And I walk up to my classroom door. I put the key in. This kid says, he whispers, "Are you the teacher that hands out constitutions?" And I said, "Yeah, I've got it set up on my computer. I can either print it out or I can give you a little booklet from the 917 Society, one of the two. Got some here from Hillsdale College too." He said, "Well, just print me one out so I can 3-hole punch it and put it in the back of my binder." So
Wow.
I printed it out, and he said, "You know, I'm really in the wrong part of the building." He said, I'm going to get in trouble." And I said, "Hey, no problem. I'll write you a note back to class. You tell him we had a conference or something." So I got him back to class. But right before he left, he said to me, he said, "Mr. Seal, I can't talk to my history teacher about this." And I said, "You should talk to your history teacher about it because it's important." I said, "One of the things that you need to learn before you leave this building is that the Constitution is what chains government down." I said, "That's my most, I think that's an extremely important thing to teach students. The Constitution being a document that limits government." So he and I had this short conversation before he went back. I said, "Good luck. I wish now I had gotten the student's name. If I had gotten the student's name, I'd look him up right now on social media and I'd go talk to him and see how he turned out." But that's one of the things that has stuck in my head for so long, that he could not talk to his teacher about the Constitution.
Wow. That's sad.
That is just messed up. I mean, particularly the history teacher. Something wrong with that picture. I'm going to guess that was probably a wokester, but not the kid, but the teacher. It's pretty sad. Todd, I've monopolized a lot of the hour here since I won't be around the second hour. So I'm sure you want to get a question or two in yourself.
Well, actually, I want to turn it over to John. He has a few questions, I'm sure, but I do want to get a comment on your quote here. It says, "Property is not just a right, it's the foundation of freedom." If you could comment on that real quick, and then John will jump in with some questions.
Yeah, when we formed this country, Todd, what we decided was that we were going to create a system so that people could gain wealth. And if we hadn't done that, we would have never landed on the moon. We would have never made the advancements in medicine that we've made. Right. Property rights and property in general are the foundation for a capitalist society. And that's one of the things that we need to protect.
Right. And I know property was going to be one of the inalienable rights before it was changed to pursuit of happiness, if I'm not wrong on that one.
That may be the case. I don't know the history that well.
Yeah, John, go ahead if you don't mind.
Actually, I was thinking earlier, David, while we were talking about property rights, is under an eminent domain. I hear a lot of people state that they're not getting fair market value, and that is part of the U.S. Constitution, Article 5, if I'm not mistaken. So, do you see this going on in Tennessee?
Yes, Fifth Amendment says you can only take it for public use, and when you do, you have to give the property owner just compensation. And just compensation is something that our courts have been arguing about since the Fifth Amendment was written. And it is basically up to the states, if it's a state taking or a local taking, to decide what just compensation is. And in the state of Tennessee right now, if property is taken, it is based on fair market value. And what that leaves out is some of the stuff that I was talking about earlier. You are damaged in many, many ways when your property is taken, and government has some duty, in my opinion, to take care of your moving cost and your increase in interest rates and many other things in ways that you are damaged. You need to come out of this financially whole and not be taken advantage of by just being given fair market value, as our courts have held.
Oh, all right. So we were talking earlier about what lies underground. And to my understanding, there can be property ownership on the surface, but property ownership underneath the surface. And in fact, if you don't own the property underneath the surface of your land, that those that do may actually, you may be forced to allow them access to your property to dig it up to access the assets underground. Do you see that happening in Tennessee?
Yes, the people that have sold their mineral rights or have bought property from someone who didn't know the mineral rights had been earlier severed have suffered the consequences, because they come onto your property with electronic equipment and boring equipment and everything else, and do everything from mineral exploration to the installation of ventilation shafts. So absolutely, you are damaged in many ways if your property rights have been severed underground. And people especially in this area call me and say, the mining company is on the surface. They've torn my fence up. They have set up shop, and they're making noise, and they have work lights 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Absolutely, we see that.
Wow, that's pretty intrusive. Going back to, you were talking about Christianity and stuff. Are you familiar with history and the Black Robe Regiment and the effect that they've had on the formation of our country, as far as our U.S. Constitution goes, our Declaration of Independence goes? And, Christianity really created this country, did it not?
I believe it did. I believe we're founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and I think our Constitution reflects it, and I think our Declaration of Independence reflects it as well.
Absolutely. I think so. When you look at the history, it seems that way. But I think that's about all I got there, Todd. If you want to go ahead and use the rest of our remaining of our time.
Absolutely. We got about 2 minutes here, David. You said you're going to do you got a podcast that's upcoming, or I don't know if you've actually started it yet. Can you talk a little bit about that? Where's it going to be available at?
Well, actually, myself and two of my friends are starting podcasts. My particular podcast is called The Property Patriot, and I'm going to deal with property issues. And sometime I'll come back and we'll deal with civil forfeiture issues, that sort of thing that we had talked about earlier. But it's going to be a podcast about property in general, and basically it's going to be a podcast on how citizens can get involved with their government, whether it pertains to property or not. So I'm going to be doing a lot of preaching about how to get involved.
No, nothing wrong with that. Where can people find you on social media, things of that nature, or how can they reach out to you? Maybe an email address, what have you?
It will be a YouTube podcast to start with, and it's called David Seal, The Property Patriot. And my email, if you want to contact me on my media email through the Tennessee Conservative News, my email there would be david@TennesseeConservativeNews.com. All of that, of course, is spelled out. So that's one way to contact me. And maybe I can come back on another time and give links to the podcast once we kick it off.
Oh, absolutely. We'll have you back on for sure. We got maybe about a minute or a little bit less than that. Any final thoughts? Maybe you want to leave the listeners with some, maybe a little something to think about?
Well, no, I think we've covered it pretty well. I don't want to get into things that would take a lot more time.
Right.
But I would like to come back and hit a few things later on. But mainly, pay attention to what your local and state government's doing. And if you don't understand it, talk to somebody who does and get involved with it.
Yeah, that's what I say all the time. We really appreciate you, David, for being here. You have an open invitation anytime you want to talk about something, any new information, what have you. When you launch the podcast, come back on. We'll promote that as well for sure. We love people like you for sure, David. But I think, am I hearing the music there, John?
You are. Yeah, David, reach out. If we're not reaching out to you, reach out to us, brother, because we'd like to hear more from you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to do a top of the hour break and come back and talk a little bit more. At least Todd and I will. Just stay tuned, stay there, and hang tight.
Broadcasting from 200 Main Street in the beautiful and historic Masonic Building. This is WSMN 1590 AM and WSMN 95.3 FM Nashua. Streaming live at wsmn.live.
USA Radio News, I'm Ron Warner. A confrontation over an anti-Islamic demonstration brought nearly 2,000 people to Dearborn last night. January 6th rioter Jake Lang was among the protesters and attempted to tear up a copy of the Quran during public comments, but was stopped.
It's over! It's over! We will have our way. Come blood or sweat, we will have our way.
The city moved its council meeting to a library and increased security, with at least 7 people arrested as protesters and counter-protesters gathered. Senator Rick Scott says President Trump may have to follow through on his threat to strike Iranian infrastructure if Iran continues firing on ships in the Strait of Hormuz. Scott says Trump has given diplomacy a chance, but Iran has walked away. He predicts the U.S. could take stronger action within the next month, while stressing that Iran must not be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon. Candidates endorsed by President Trump are taking a few hits in the primaries.
Several states held primary elections on Tuesday. Republicans endorsed by Trump tend to win their primaries, but 3 were defeated yesterday, according to the results. Trump's pick for governor of Wyoming, Megan Degenfelder, lost her primary to State Senator Eric Barlow, and 2 Trump-backed candidates in Florida were also defeated. This follows recent Trump defeats in Minnesota, where Mike Lindell lost his race for governor, and in Michigan, where Trump's pick for Congress lost to an opponent who had already dropped out. Still, Trump-backed Republicans have won the majority of their primaries so far this year. I'm Tammy Trujillo.
Disney says pressure from the Federal Communications Commission is changing how ABC's The View books political candidates. In a lawsuit, Disney says the show has passed on several candidates since the FCC inquiry into a February appearance by Texas Democrat James Tallarico. FCC Chairman Brendan Carr calls the lawsuit meritless and says the agency is following the facts and the law. From America's News Network, USA Radio News.
Maybe this is you too. There's enormous frustration right now with healthcare costs. It is amazing. Healthcare costs for families in the last 20 years have almost tripled. And it just keeps getting worse. All this to say, this is why MediShare is so in demand right now. People are looking for alternatives. And MediShare is proven. You can save thousands of dollars a year and actually like it more. Over 1 million Americans are now part of healthcare sharing, and MediShare is the gold standard. It's trusted. It works. It's been helping people save money and have peace of mind now for 30 plus years. It's not some big impersonal thing either. It's a community of people like you helping each other. So yeah, if you're frustrated too, here's your chance to make a refreshing change. You'll notice the difference as soon as you call. They're easy to talk to. You can get a price within 2 minutes. Here is the number. Call 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE 40. 855-SHARE-40.
Tired of wondering where your money really goes? At Mammoth Nation, we built what was missing. The America First Marketplace. Every brand we feature is 100% American owned and operated, rigorously vetted for their values and committed to supporting our Constitution, law enforcement, and the American dream. When you shop with us, your dollar stays in the neighborhood, supporting families, veterans, and charities like Folds of Honor. No more sending your hard-earned money overseas to the companies that don't respect you here. Your dollar reflects your values. Your dollar, your values. Your America. Join Mammoth Nation today and be part of building a patriot economy by going to truckersunitedforfreedom.com affiliate page and hit that link. American built, America strong. Mammoth Nation.
Hi, Nashua. I'm Perry Cataldo from Choice Benefit Services, your local insurance agent that has dedicated himself to all the Medicare plans in New Hampshire. Whether you're just turning 65, new to Medicare, or already have a plan, I'll explain all your Medicare options and extra benefits that you hear so much about. I ensure you're getting all you're entitled to and all that you deserve. Nashua, don't get fooled again this year. Call Perry Cataldo at 603-461-5550. That's 603-461-5550. Or visit me online at cbsnh.com. That's cbsnh.com. I look forward to hearing from you. And remember, health is wealth.
Continuing the legacy started in 1904, Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument Incorporated continues to provide the same high-quality monument, custom headstone, and stoneworking craftsmanship today that they built their reputation on over 100 years ago, servicing Nashua, New Hampshire, as well as nearby areas in Massachusetts, such as Lowell, Billerica, Chelmsford, and beyond. From creating custom monuments to memorialize, to landscaping and granite work or restorative services, each job is done to your satisfaction and is backed by decades of experience and integrity. If you're thinking about stonework, think Roger Pellerin of Gate City Monument. Visit online at gatecitymonument.com. Stop by and meet Roger at 321 West Hollis Street in Nashua, or call 603-883-7141. That's 603-883-7141. Gate City Monument, memorials of distinction for people who care.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just now tuning in, you're listening to Common Sense Conservatives right here, WSMN. 1590 on your AM dial, 95.3 on your FM dial. Todd, we have reached $40 trillion in debt. I mean, isn't that incredible?
It's sad, it's pathetic, and you know what? We Americans, by and large, the people who have voted for the same old same, keeps voting the same old people back in, year out, decade after decade. And of course, the people that stay at home on election day, have done it to ourselves. The people who want theirs, it's, I got to get mine, want to keep everybody else from getting theirs, but I got to get mine. I'm not the problem. Everybody else is the problem. I'm not talking about people who legitimately need something, or have paid into a system where they're supposed to be guaranteed something on the return down the road. I'm just talking about all the welfare programs that are out there ad nauseum. We just keep throwing it out there. Not even that, just the military industrial complex that's out of control. All of these major corporate welfare is a problem as well. Just robbing from, future generations because we're too greedy at the moment. The suckling pig is huge at this point, and we're doing it to ourselves in a lot of ways, and we're allowing our government officials to do the same thing. Buying people off with money that's not theirs and it doesn't exist yet. You know what I mean? Borrowing for future generations. It's a problem.
Well, what's it going to mean for us in the future? I mean, we're going to eventually reach $50 trillion, $60 trillion, $100 trillion. Technically, we're at $114 trillion if you count all of our interest and our
right.
What do they call it? On
right.
I can't remember.
Unfunded, all the stuff that's down the road.
The unfunded,
the pension liabilities down the road. All this stuff. It's a major problem. There'll be a collapse at some point, and whether people realize it or not, who knows? But it could be a major collapse where people are taken to the streets. Never mind bread lines. You're going to be killing your neighbor for a morsel of food. This idea of there's going to be some grand civil war. It'll be you hold up against your neighbors and people that are coming for your stuff. That's how it'll go down. Sadly.
I think you run a little bit different social media groups than I do, but some of
I just try to live in reality. I
was setting up to ask you, do you feel like you're seeing on social media that people feel like we're already there? That's the hope they feel, or lack of, is that we're already there in collapse. We're facing collapse, and they really don't feel like they see a future.
Well, I think people, don't really see a future, but on social media, it's the same old nonsense. It's the echo chambers. It's, my side against your side. And this idea, Second Amendment's in case our government becomes tyrannical. $40 trillion in debt's pretty tyrannical, for crying out loud. What they've wasted it on, what they fleeced us with, and what they've stolen from all of us. And we allow it to happen. I mean, it's pretty tyrannical, not calling for violence or anything like that. But here's the thing, a tyrannical government isn't them coming door to door, taking your stuff or this and that. It's basically allowing everything to collapse because after they've stolen everything that they possibly can, they're going to be held up somewhere. The billionaires, whatever, they'll be held up somewhere for as long as they can. And the rest of us will be fighting it out. I mean, that's pretty much it. And we've allowed our own individual sovereignty to be wasted because we don't vote. We don't participate in the process. We don't understand civics. We don't understand the basics of government. And we vote for people who promise us, pie in the sky nonsense. Or we elect people who talk about the patriotism, all this stuff, liberty and all that. But in the end, they're the ones on the take just the same. And we do nothing about it. That's it's a shame on us. essentially.
We don't have the leadership we think we have. We don't have the leadership we think we're
we
voting
have
for.
people that, talk about data centers, but they use social media and all this stuff, to do all these nice, wonderful videos that make you feel like they're in there fighting for you. But really, they're just trying to snow you into supporting them and whatever nonsense that they're trying to push down your throat.
It's kind of funny because now we use that term data centers. What are server farms? Is that the term we always use? There's a server farm over there. There's a server farm over there, and that's what we were using, right? When we're using these cloud services and storage services.
Yeah. Essentially, the data centers are not only just server farms, but you also got your AI stuff that goes in there as well. So you got AI computing and all that good stuff. That's sitting there learning and thinking and all that stuff. So it's always active and stuff. It's not just data storage anymore. So it's quite a bit more than that.
Yeah. I was just saying we used to call them server farms, and now they're all of a sudden data centers is the new word for it.
Right.
And I think a lot of people, as our guest alluded to, a lot of people don't seem to understand what data centers really are because we associate them now with artificial intelligence.
Well, what is funny, like David said, a 100% true patriot, true constitutionalist. He talked about, we understand there's going to be data centers. We need them for sure. Because all the technology that we use, everything is tech, all the shopping that we do now, not necessarily all of it, but great majority of the shopping that we do. And of course, all the information that's out there, all the cat videos, all the nonsense that we put on social media, it's got to be put somewhere. So if not in your backyard, whose backyard is it going to go into? It's going to go somewhere. We need to realize that. So, and that's why I say, hey, don't use a lot of tech if you don't need to, be a little bit more moderate user. I'm quite kind of a moderate user, if you will. I understand AI has a place, if you will, but it doesn't have to be used to make every stupid thing that we can think of under the sun, for crying out loud. That pushes the need for more of these data centers to go somewhere.
Actually, AI is enhanced a lot with software developments and stuff. However, to your point,
I understand.
Like I downloaded a thing for voice mode and stuff like this. It does have AI in it, but you know what? It's local to my machine, not to a data center somewhere. You can take in Hugging Face and things like that. You can download your own local AI to run and operate. However, you do need a big enough computer to operate it, depending on how many billions of parameters it's been trained on and things like that.
But the more we use, of course, you're going to need more power. So you got to think about this. The current utility infrastructure is already strained as it is. It was built for stuff like in the pre 1990s for the most part. You know what I'm saying? So now all of a sudden we're well into the 2000s. Burden our infrastructure. People don't want to talk about nuclear, which is very safe, obviously, to use, to operate, very cheap. Of course, people, whenever they talk about nuclear waste, you don't want to put that anywhere. So now you talk about can't use nuclear. At what point we're going to have a crisis where you're going to have rolling blackouts that are going to go for days on end across the country. There's going to be a breaking point here. I think there's got to be a happy medium, and we all have to realize we have a role to play and be more responsible whenever we're talking about using all this tech that we have out there. Because the data centers are going to come one way or another, and you got to power them somehow.
So when it comes to power, can I improvise by, say, if I were to use battery packs, you can use, like, say, semi-truck batteries with power inverters. Isn't it cheaper to charge those batteries and use power off those batteries with an inverter to operate your systems? Would you not be balancing the cost as much as, as opposed to running it directly into your wall outlet?
That's an interesting thought, right? But I'm sure there's a lot.
Seems like there's things you can do. That's what solar power does. You got this huge battery pack. You're charging off some solar panels that are tapping into your power box in your house.
Right. It's especially if you have peak hours, you need that extra power. Boom, you got some battery right there. Power goes out, you got a little battery backup. But what's funny is people, whenever you see those commercials, it's like, oh, we have battery backup, and it's like they're running everything in the house off of batteries. It's like that's gonna run out pretty quickly. People, don't have everything on in the house. The essentials, medical equipment, things of that nature. Maybe a refrigerator or freezer, but not everything in the house needs to be on battery backup. Come on now.
So we've had a lot of interesting questions come along. Holden wanted us to start discussing, I think maybe he was talking to somebody in chats, but discussing the petroleum reserve and how the United States is treating that like the Social Security fund as well. Any thoughts on that?
Here's the thing. Well, Biden, whenever he was in office, I'm not talking about. Let's go back and beat up on Biden here. But Biden released a lot of that to lower some of the energy costs, if you will. And the strategic reserves is there in case there's an invasion for military purposes. It's not to alleviate some temporary gas costs. And here's the thing: even if you released all of our reserves, it would only affect gas prices marginally, only for a short period of time anyway. And now all of a sudden you don't have a strategic reserves for any military force to be able to combat any invasion that we may be facing at the time. That's a problem.
Yeah, I think there's a certain percentage, right? They have to maintain a certain amount that they can only tap into so much.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's 25%, 40%, or what it is, but I think they have to maintain a certain amount for purposes you described.
Right. Absolutely. And of course that's not to, everybody thinks it's we have a lot of people who like to travel just to travel, just to get out on the road. And we do have a lot of gas guzzlers that are out there. For sure. We do. And everybody wants to go here and there, everywhere, under the sun. It's like at some point you got to take a little bit of that responsibility on yourself and realize maybe I don't need to make that extra trip today or this week. Preserve a little bit of that for future use, or etc. I don't know, a little bit of individual responsibility comes to mind.
Yeah, I think that's why the left likes to jack up the prices, right? The higher the prices, the less you're going to travel, so you consume less. I think that's some of their logic. They associate that with global warming and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
If you buy into that nonsense,
my thing is the price should be whatever the market says it is. The way I look at it, and there's a lot of things we could do to be able to bring those prices down. Anyway, but that's just my thought on that. And of course, make sure the Straits of Hormuz is open. And try to. People say, "Oh, it's only 20% that flows through there." It's like that's 20% is a lot, for crying out loud. I mean, think about this: if you lost 20%. If you lost 20% of your leg, would you be like, "Oh, I only lost 20% of my leg"? I mean, that's a big chunk of your leg, for crying out loud. I mean, that's a lot, regardless of where it goes in the world. Regardless of where it goes
what a lot of people don't realize, to my understanding, some of them Gulf states have pipelines, and they're really utilizing those pipelines right now. But Trump is now saying he's clearing up the Strait of Hormuz, and things are going to open up there. That Iran's they're weakened so bad they can't control it anymore.
Right.
They can't stop the flow of ships anymore like they were doing.
Oh, for sure. But here's the thing: Iran is desperate at this point, and a desperate person, even against a much bigger power like the U.S. I mean, we can control the airspace, the flow of goods through the Hormuz, the straits, whatever. But a desperate power can do a lot against even a bigger power if we're not careful. So right now, I think they're very desperate. And you think about this: even a tiny dog that's cornered, that's desperate can lunge and bite you and have an effect on you in a big way.
Yeah.
So we have to be very careful of that.
I had a friend, or I know a guy, when we were doing trucking activist stuff, and this one gentleman was always saying, "We got to shut them down, guys. We just got to shut these down." That was his mantra, right? Shut them down. And one time we were on the phone talking. He says, "John, desperate times calls for desperate measures." I'm like, "Joe, people who take desperate measures make bad decisions."
Right.
And that's where they're at. They're going to start making bad decisions. Utilize bad decisions. If we're strategic about it, we'll be anticipating that, and they'll expose them.
If your starting point is from a point of desperation, you're going to lose. I mean, in the long run, you're going to lose. You have to be rational. You have to go through different steps, through different phases before you get to desperation time. You know what I mean? Don't ever start out, in panic mode. And there's a lot of people that just panic from the word go, and they make bad decisions. It could be a life and death situation where you need to get a tourniquet on somebody. And the next thing you know, you're sitting there freaking out for a minute or, a minute and a half before you even calm down to realize what the heck's the situation here. By that point, the person's bled out, whenever you could have actually got a tourniquet on it within 10, 15 seconds, and then freak out after the fact. You know what I mean? Never go to panic mode immediately. That's a surefire way to either die or to have other people killed. That's dangerous in my mode, especially in my former profession.
Yeah. So desperate measures leads to adverse outcomes.
Right.
Right. So, let's see, what else do we have here? Somebody was talking about, why doesn't the Federal Reserve pay back some of the debt? So, no, that wasn't the one.
The Federal Reserve doesn't have how much money? How much money do you think they have?
This has shifted on me quite a bit. So let's see, who is the U.S. government paying all that interest on the debt to?
A lot of
private
it is to
companies
a lot of it. A
losing
lot of it's
cash
to
from the
American
taxpayers to
people.
private companies.
A lot of it's through the American people through bonds and things of that nature. A lot of it is to the American people. The American people, I think, holds most of the debt. I believe.
They do actually.
Yeah.
They assessed or they put a lot of it towards retirement funds and things like that, like your Social Security and thing. And the problem is the U.S. government pays so little taxes on it that the interest rates that you're, pay so much little interest rates on it that it doesn't balance out the
Right.
Fact that you're not claiming interest. So you might be getting 4% elsewhere, but they're only paying you 1%. So you're losing out is what I'm getting. Oh, with inflation, that's what it is. So the inflation counterbalances. So if they're paying 1% interest rate, but inflation's running up at 2.5 to 3%, you're losing money on your Social Security or
Right.
whatever retirement funds that you have. And they are frequently every year having to release some of those funds so people can retire because so many people retire every year. So it's been kind of a juggling act for them. So that you're right. That's one of the issues with
Right.
our national debt. And if they keep deficit spending, I don't think we're going to be retiring, Todd. They're not even going to allow us to retire. They're like, no, you have to work yourself into a grave because we can't afford you to retire now.
Yeah, it's funny is that the people who are working, who are closing in on retirement age, it's like, they're going to be asked to work just a little bit more. And meanwhile, you have these people that are, cradled to the grave, with their hand out. It's like nothing's ever going to be asked of them because they need you to work a little bit longer to help fund them. It's so sad. It's pathetic. I mean, we need to shut off a lot of these programs, if you will, which would, I think, either get people back to work or force them to make hard decisions, if you will. But paying somebody just to exist, I don't think is the right answer. Certainly has not bode well for us or any civilization in the past.
Sadly, I think that's what it's going to come down to when the money's just not there anymore. You can't borrow it. You've got nowhere
Right.
to just keep deficit spending. Sooner or later, the spigot's going to get shut off. It's just going to naturally happen. And you're right. They're going to start cutting loose all the dead weight. So
Right.
it's something people should think about. And more importantly, with people talking about the losses of jobs with AI, and we're seeing some of that happen, like Amazon laying off people because they don't need so many office people now. You got AI answering phones, which is irritating, by the way, if any corporate entities are listening, and I doubt they are, but it's irritating to call for customer service and get an AI bot and have to scream at it until it finally gets you a human being, if there's one even available. It's probably just another bot pretending to be human. I don't know, because they sound awfully good like they are. So, but the point is it's going to compound if people are going to get displaced. So people really need to think about where they're going to be in the future right now, don't they? We really need to start doing some planning and reconsidering our opportunities or creating opportunities.
Right. Well, speaking of where people may be in the future, California is about to lose a few more people. Prince Harry, or the former Prince, I don't know if he's a former prince. I guess he still is a prince. He hasn't lost the title. And Meghan Markle will be moving back to the UK with their children after 6 years in California, stating, California wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So more people have just left California, ladies and gentlemen. And of course, he's heading back across the pond. We say good riddance, goodbye, out of Wiedersehen, tschüss. All the different goodbyes we can say, I guess. Didn't really need you here. Don't really need you there. I really don't care about the Royals. I mean, to me, from the historical standpoint, it's an interesting thing to read, to watch those videos, etc. But in the modern 21st century, do we really need Royals? I don't think so.
I don't understand the infatuation of it. I guess I can understand the whole
from a historical
concept
standpoint, it's
about
interesting.
romanticizing the idea of being a princess. And they
Yeah.
did that with Princess Diana. That's where it really took off. They were marketing the royals on television and the lives of the
Right.
royals, kind of like that Robin Leach's Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. It's
Robin Leach, yes.
yeah, put that right in everybody's face. That too bad you're poor and you're suffering, you're struggling to get by. But look how these guys really out of good. I don't need to see that crap. I got my own worries to worry about. I'm going to worry about my own worries, and if they're having a good life, get on them. I don't need to know, and I'm not going to sit there and
Right.
talk at it, right? But they did that with the royals, with Princess Diana, and it seems. I mean, everybody followed them prior to that, I guess, but it really blew up in the 1980s,
Right.
with
I mean,
Diana, but it was like that love story romance thing. Everybody went gaga over. I didn't get it.
The more we find out about this family, we're like, why would we put these people, and why were they on a pedestal for so long? They're dysfunctional basically white. I hate to say it, but they're kind of a dysfunctional white trash family. I mean, you think about it, they really are, with money and title. And go back, peel back layers of generations, with the exception of maybe Queen Elizabeth II, who seemed to be fairly committed to her duty, from what all I could tell from history and what people tell about her, even behind the scenes stuff for the most part. Was fairly committed to her duty. But you go back enough, man, it's in, her uncle, for crying out loud, the abdication, all that. I mean, and enough of these royals through generations and generations, going back centuries, just really trashy people, for crying out loud.
Well, I don't think all of them are, but yeah,
not
you
all
get
of
the
them. No, for
inside
sure,
dirt,
for sure.
and you get
A lot
it's
of
like
them
any
are.
family. I mean, we're all got a
I agree.
dysfunctionalism and-
But
it's
now,
but the thing of it is they've lost the mystery, and that's what you're driving at here. Is
Right.
in the old days, if you kept a little mystery, people kind of saw you in a certain light. And once they
Right.
start seeing all the little details about your life and find the flaws, all of a sudden you lost the mystery, and you're not held in such high regard.
Right, and especially with the Epstein connections there, and then of course, all that sickness that's just, I mean, come on now. Before I'm about to try to say some curse words, I'm going to avoid that, but yeah, just horrible people, man, in a lot of respects. I mean, I'm not saying all of them. You're right, but good riddance, Harry. We don't need you here.
Harry, yeah, I think he was, well, I don't know if I want to get into that. I don't want to start doing the whole storytelling and
Right.
stuff.
I think the
family and
wife.
start contributing. But yes, I always thought he was kind of tripped up as a kid. But then again,
Yeah.
is he really the bodyguard's son?
Right. I mean, if you look at the pictures, it's like, man, that's very suspect, isn't it? I mean, look at him.
Yeah,
Very,
one of those
very
dirty
possible.
little secrets that probably Harry even knew. And he's like, I'm not even really blood, man. Stinks to be me.
Yeah. Well, he was raised quite well, But anyway, it is what it is. It is what it is.
Let's see what else we got going on here. Obviously, we got better things to talk about. That somebody here says Ben Shapiro argues that war is a simple calculus of pain tolerance, stating that victory belongs to the side willing to endure more suffering. Know that Ben is right, but I think he's right on that point. I guess when it comes to warfare, that's what it comes down to, but it also comes down to financial ability. I mean, you may be able to suffer a great deal, but when you don't have any more missiles to fire back, like in the case of Iran, I don't know if I guess you lose your pain tolerance at that point in time, or you just don't have anything to send back. So you're like, well, I got nothing to fight with. I got to throw up my hands and surrender.
Right. But also you got to think about from the standpoint of the U.S., I mean, over the decades and decades, we've spent a lot of munitions, if you will, and not really replaced them to the levels that we would need on a war footing. And we went in there without, prepping for war. And we just started firing a bunch of our reserve weapons, and it's like, it takes time to build all that stuff up before you go to a war. And now I think that's a big problem. And so there's going to be a lot of spending for defense. A lot of these munitions are very smart weapons, if you will. So they cost a heck of a lot of money. Also, the economic pressure that's going to be placed on the U.S. and of course the American people, as we see people, serving overseas for maybe it's going to be up to a year coming up soon, with no end in sight, with no real strategy or direction, and we've not really heard that out of Washington right now. What's the strategy, or what's the end game? What do we hope to get out of this? What does a victory look like? Is it full regime change? If that's the case, you may very well have to commit ground troops. Are we prepared to do that? Is the American people prepared to do that? After the long wars on terror that we've had so far, are they willing to commit to that? That's another pain threshold issue that we have to ask ourselves. And people will say, oh, he's anti-war, anti-this. I've been to wars, served my country honorably and admirably for, decades. We'd gladly do it again. But we need to be told what are the reasons here. What's the end game look like, and not just we'll see what happens. Because you think about it, you can't keep coming back to the American people saying we've won the war, and then they keep firing at us. Well, we won the war again. There's a point where people just stop listening to you.
You can't give them time to dig out their ammunitions after you buried them. That's
another thing
one
as
issue.
well.
And the other
Once
issue
they start
is
digging
China.
it out, blow it up
China
again,
has
blow
been
it up again.
supplying Iran with not necessarily missiles and drones, but the ability to build missiles and drones. And so they
Right.
give them the products, and these are dual purpose products, so they can be used for other things. So it's not so much suspect or that you're going to limit them products from getting in there, but what's it take to
Right.
build drones? And a lot of it's just computer products and things like that. It's
Right.
It's,
And a
uh
lot of those things they could have had stockpiled for years in the off chance they need them. And they don't have the most sophisticated drones, but they don't really need them to do what they need them to do.
No, I like that, Holden. Maybe the Taliban will let us borrow our weapons back to save on shipping. I hope we fried their software so they can't even use them. So let's see. If
Yeah.
the U.S. can't even keep a small waterway open, how will it go if China wants Taiwan? Well, honestly, China is not in any position to take Taiwan, and we know that.
No.
They're having
Right.
way too much infighting, and
yeah.
I think they'll cause an
Another
international incident for it won't just be the United States. I don't think.
And here's the thing: you talk
Taiwan.
about again a big power like China going to try to take Taiwan. Taiwan's going to give them everything that they can because they're not going to surrender. So they're going to have to, it's going to cost them a lot of money, a lot of treasure, a lot of blood to try to take Taiwan right off the bat. That's even before U.S. intervenes, if we intervene at all. So it's going to take a heck of a lot from China. So that's another thing. What pain threshold are they willing to tolerate? And of course, with communism being unpopular, even in China, for crying out loud, at what point does the people there say this is our opportunity to take over, to push back, to topple our government? That's another thing to consider that China has to consider.
Yeah, they got quite a bit going on probably
Right.
more than we'll
And
ever
this is
know.
where a situation where a smaller nation that's committed back against the wall, you're in the corner, you have to fight. There's no way around it. A smaller power can have a major effect against a bigger power, especially whenever people at home lose faith in any fighting, if you will. And of course, they have to conscript people in China. Are the people going to stand up to that? Or are they just going to go along willy nilly? And of course, conscripted soldiers fight harder than actual people who want to be there.
This is true. That's
Yep.
how we won our Revolutionary War. Is people fighting us over here.
People that wanted to stay
they
there and
prefer to
fight.
be home in Britain. They had their own problems at home. They didn't want to be here.
Right.
They didn't want to fight
And
with us.
And of course, the Brits, they had bigger concerns in other parts of the world other than just the U.S. or what became the U.S. The colonies.
The colonists.
You got to think about this. Whenever they surrendered, the thought back in jolly old England was basically, hey, we can come back at some point and re-exact ourselves if we want to. Kind of that's what happened in the War of 1812. In Britain, they kind of viewed it as an extension of the Revolution, whereas we view it as a separate war altogether.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. So we were talking about our $40 trillion worth of debt.
Yeah. Also,
what's your
going back to
state? What's your state debt, Todd?
Our state has a constitutional amendment where we can't have any debt. So we don't have any debt. But last year they had, I think, $1.5 billion surplus, I think. And of course, our roads, I think, is what I heard is $30 billion behind. So the question posed today: what should the state legislature or the governor do with $1.5 billion? Certainly spend it on something that we need. Probably road infrastructure is somewhere where it should go.
Well, I hate to contradict you, but according to the USDebtClock.org, you have a population of 7,273,763 people with an unemployment rate of 111,792 people. Your debt's running at $73,493,558,000.
Probably our share of the national debt.
$5 billion. So I'm wondering. It just says state.
I think that's a share of the national debt or whatever. But the state itself doesn't have. It doesn't run a debt like that.
You think that's a share?
I think that's a share of it, probably.
It doesn't specify that. It just says state debt clocks.
Yeah.
So,
but anyway,
New Hampshire was running somewhere, of course, a much lower population at 1.4 million people at 11 billion, 155,962,000, with a spending of 17 billion. So, if it's state debt, as it's describing here, then that would be some spending going on in the states. So something for people to think about, because we do run state debts, and it's not just national debt. We also run state debt. States sometimes aren't spending money as wisely. I know New Hampshire's Congress has been pretty good about trying to manage the money. I mean, because our tax base is the way it is the way it's structured, they don't have the ability. It's not just an endless well they can tap into. So they work really hard trying to manage their spending and stuff.
Interesting. So what's your thoughts on Iran at the moment? Do we have an end game in sight here, John? What do you think?
Well, Trump's end game or exit strategy, whatever you want to call it, is to make a deal. That's what Trump really wants. He's expressed that. I believe in my heart of hearts, that's what he really wants. He'll accept this regime if they're willing to make a deal. And he's even said it himself. They're liars. They'll lie to you to get what they want. I don't know how he thinks a deal's going to work. They can't sign a treaty and stick to it. Their whole theocracy dictates that it's okay to lie to an infidel. It's okay to lie to a non-believer. So they're going to say what you want to hear to get you to either stall you, to sway you, or get what they want. And so I think that's been Trump's strategy. However, if he's going to end up seeing this through, I think he's going to have to do those decapitation strikes he's been talking about. And I don't know if that's just more threatening talk because Trump likes to poke at people, or if he's seriously considering decapitation strikes and what that really means as far as attacks go, what his strategies are.
Right. Yep. Yeah. And some people were last week, I believe it was, telling me, is he going to use nuclear weapons or something like that? And if he chooses to use nukes, will they be able to stop him from using them or whatever? And I'm like, is this where we're speculating at this point? Have we arrived at nukes? You know what I mean? Who knows? What's in somebody's mind?
That's not Trump. Trump. That's not his. Somebody's here made a statement about Trump likes things that go boom or something to that effect, and maybe he'll use nukes. But I don't think that's something that Trump was. I don't think that's an option on the table for him because he values life. I'm kind of banking on or thinking that when that hit happened and we lost school children in Iran because of some missile strikes. I don't think he took that well. I think that set pretty hard with him because he's that sort of person. I don't think he disvalues life. I don't think he disvalues people that way. And he takes it to heart. Nuclear weapons that'd be a hard strike. You know what I'm saying? You could lose a lot of life, a lot of quality.
Because
of life.
if you throw one out there, you're going to have to throw several. And then you're going to have other nuclear powers that are going to be like, you know what? We need to go ahead and throw a few out there ourselves,
That could be an international incident once you start going that high and the spectrum. Yeah. I don't think that's a risk anybody wants.
And once
you
use one nuclear weapon, and it's like now all these countries that have access to even just some radiological weapons, they're going to use that. They'll use chemical, they use biological, it'll be all off the table at that point. So, the COVID-19, would be just, nothing compared to what could be released on the whole world.
I think his long-term strategy is to cut off their supplies at the Strait and break them economically is what he's attempting to do. I think that's his biggest strategy right now.
Right. They're losing what 500 million a day, something like that. I've listened to Victor Davis Hanson the other day talking about that. Something like 500 million a day they're losing. And with their economy, they can't afford $500 million a day, obviously. With our economy, we can afford that for a lot longer for sure. But we're not losing that type of money for sure. But they are. Our ports are wide open. Our trains are running. Our trucks are, out there on the highways right now. So our economy is still going. Whenever theirs is basically essentially almost come to a halt.
Do you know what a MOAB is? MOAB is that
mother of all bombs? Yeah,
mother
of all. Yeah, it's the biggest non-nuclear bomb. It's a huge bunker buster type bomb. You wouldn't use it over a city. It's not what it's designed for.
All right, yeah,
it's not designed to blow up.
Maybe you should use one on Karg Island, but the problem with that is we don't want to deplete their infrastructure for the next. If there's going to be a next regime, we want them to be able to grow and redevelop at a reasonable pace. And if you take out their infrastructure, that much of their infrastructure, you may cripple them for too many years to come, and it's going to be costly. And then we'll probably have to invest our own monies into rebuilding. And it's just
because you destroy infrastructure. Let's say water, power infrastructure. What maybe take a few minutes to destroy, a few hours to destroy, could take years or decades to actually rebuild, because you got to go in and take everything back out, then you got to put things back in. It could take many decades, and you're talking about major hardships, innocent civilians dying just as a result of that, which is a non-starter for most civilized world like ourselves, like in America. It's not a non-starter for us.
It's unnecessary because we're blocking them
Right.
off from trade. And so
Right.
their oil is not going anywhere, and they're not receiving any goods that we're aware
Right.
of. So if they are, it's by the grace of Trump or the United States military. So yeah, I think we got him over a barrel there, and I think that's what Trump's probably going to do, is see if he can wait him out for a while longer and deplete their economy to the point they have to give up, or maybe the Kurds, the Iranian Kurds, may get bigger forces. When people get upset and they say, no, wait, we're starving here and we're not going to put up with this. We'll just go against this regime ourselves.
Right.
And that's the idea, to turn them against one another, right?
Yeah. You could see factions within that country that have been held down for a long time that are like, now's our opportunity. Our regime is weak. We can actually do something at this point, and who knows if any other governments would want to throw anything in there covertly to help fund that, or to help supply people like that. Very possible.
Holden saying Cargillon won't be missed and save some lives. I disagree with you on that. I think it will be missed. That's their major export. If the country doesn't have it, it'll be missed by them anyway. Maybe it won't be missed by the rest of the world. But here again, Holden, if you think about taking out their ability to export oil in the future, or the near future, then isn't that going to affect the rest of the globe? When the oil's not hitting the globe, it's going to increase the markets, right? The cost in the markets for oil.
Yeah. So here's a side story here. Elon Musk, this is on Newsmax, says Chauvin is not a murderer, should be freed. Elon Musk on Wednesday called for former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin to be freed. He said Chauvin was wrongly convicted of murder in the 2020 death of George Floyd. What are your thoughts on that? I do think he was shouldn't have been tried or convicted on murder charges. That's a bit much in my
He
opinion.
got railroaded. Let's be honest. He got railroaded because he was a prime target of the time for the movement, otherwise known as Black Lives Matter and all this other nonsense going on.
White officer.
And he was just a prime target. Let's go get this guy, make an example of this guy, and throw everything we can at this guy. While at the same time, when you look at the medical examiner's report, it's talking about the amount of fentanyl in his body. And saying, but he didn't die of fentanyl. Dude, that man was a walking dead man. He was dying. And then later on, they come along and say, well, actually, yeah, he died of fentanyl. It's like, so either he did or didn't, folks. Make up our minds, and so even people today are still claiming it wasn't fentanyl. He killed him with that hold and all this other stuff. And
no, I mean,
if you had enough fentanyl in his body, he was not long for life.
Right. And he wasn't, a passive, just peaceful, bystander who got placed into a chokehold needlessly. Come on now. That didn't happen.
No, they had him contained and then he escaped.
Right.
And brought this upon himself.
Right.
This wasn't a situation that they created, the officers created. This is a situation that George Floyd created. So now Chauvin has to pay a price for a situation that he didn't even create. He was trying to mitigate the issue.
Right. He was just responding, and here's the thing. He didn't initiate the contact anyway. He wasn't there trying to, he was there to try to de-escalate a situation. And like you said, he escaped from their custody. So you have to basically re-apprehend him at that point. And once somebody's escaping, being very violent, you're going to try to restrain him any way you can, But if the chokehold was illegal, should he, should he face reprimand of some sort? Absolutely should have been fired, perhaps. Maybe an assault charge, but not murder.
No, it was not. It's been determined. It was not an illegal hold. It wasn't a chokehold. He had his knee on the back of his neck, but he was laying on his belly with his hands behind his back. So I spoke with a guy. He was a retired New York cop, and he said in New York they did outlaw that, and he said it is a dangerous move. Minneapolis did not have any laws against using that tactic, but he says it can be a dangerous move, and people perish because of it. So it doesn't mean that it can't happen. I just don't think that Chauvin was the cause of his demise.
No, it was, Chauvin certainly was. Chauvin was doing his job. I mean, if you wanted to fire him, by all means, fire him. That's one thing, but no, don't put him in jail for murder.
No, it's funny enough. You always hear about these cases that were more questionable, and law enforcement officers were, determined as not being in the wrong. And then you got a case like this, he was railroaded, it was just political. That's
Oh,
the
for
term
sure.
for it.
For
It
sure.
was a political maneuver. Go after this guy and bury him.
Right. Absolutely. So what do you make of the midterms coming up? We got 70 some days roughly. I don't know off the top of my head how many, but 70 some days to the midterms. How do you think the Democratic Socialists and the Democrats in general are going to fare? Or Republicans are going to be able to hold on to anything?
That is undeterminable. It really is. I'd like to say Republicans are going to hold their own, and I think it's going to be close. But I can't even say that way. I'm making no predictions, honestly, because you never know in these circumstances. You may be pleasantly surprised, or you may be very, very unpleasantly surprised. But I can tell you this: the House is desperate. The left is desperate. They really want it. They got to get either the one chamber or the other. They've got to either get the House or they've got to get the Senate, and they know it, and so they're going to work very, very hard at it. However, on the same notion, the Trump administration's been very keen on stopping the exploits, with USAID. There's been a few other things they have done. And recently now, Act Blue is being investigated because some of the nefarious activities that have gone on there. Apparently, I think investigations have been done, and people have been contacted and says, we see you've donated $5,000 to Act Blue. And people are, what are you talking about? I didn't donate $5,000, maybe 100, but not 5,000. So it's coming to find out that they're using other people's money to maximize donations for people that didn't donate as much, or whatever, however they're doing it. So there is an investigation going on. So if they continue to break down the left the way they've been doing for their nefarious activities, obviously we don't want them going after things they're legally doing, because that would be, that'd be tyrannical. And we don't want to see that. Even if we're going to lose the House or lose the Senate, we definitely want to be legal about everything we do.
Absolutely. I agree with you.
So, but no, there's investigations going on, nefarious activities from the left. And as long as they break those down, we might actually have a chance. Now, conservatives out there that might be listening, this is you right here.
Yeah.
If you don't get out and vote, then
wake up.
We lose because you didn't do your due diligence.
And the stupid statement of, well, it's all rigged, or they know who they want to win anyway, is stupid and foolish. It's like, first off, who's they? Who are you talking about? The infamous they? They say this, they say that, they say a lot of things. When they are asked who they are, they have no idea, right? Nobody knows who they are. Come on now. Who's they?
Yeah, that's kind of a poor way to word it, isn't it? I mean, if it's this particular faction of this party or these people in this party, and you label
most people on the right.
Kamala Harris, you say Kamala Harris, then fine. But yeah, saying they is just kind of generic.
Right. But people on the right are generally the first people to say that they won't vote or will stay at home. It's most of the people that are on the right. They're the ones who stay at home. Whenever I run for office, you get the voting rolls, and you see who voted in which primary, when they voted and when they haven't voted. And that's how you target them. I don't say target them, but for solicitation, whether you're going to send a mailer out. You don't want to send it out to the entire registered voters in your district. What you want to do is figure out who's likely to vote, and then you send them the mailer, if you will. If they're voting in Republican primary or Democrat, whatever the case may be, you target them that way. It saves you a lot of money. And also you're going to get the more likely voters. But you see a lot of people that will miss primary, local elections. They'll hit a presidential election, maybe a governor's general election, but that's about it. It's like, why are you sitting at home? Occasionally they'll vote in a presidential primary as Republican or whatever. And that's how you know that they're, quote, Republicans. And it's like most Republicans that are on these lists are sitting out elections, whereas the Democrats, you'll see voting in nearly every election. And a lot of times you'll see Democrats, Democrat, then it'll be Republican, because in Tennessee, we have semi-open primaries where you can just pick up whatever ballot you want. And a lot of times what they'll do, Dems will come over and pick up a Republican ballot, and we'll get a less conservative Republican as a nominee in some of these positions. And we've got to do something about that as well.
So Holden's bringing up a point about voting machines have been compromised, and there's been a lot of talk and studies about that too. And there's people that put together videos that were, professionals when it comes to voting machines to show you how they can be compromised, how the algorithms can be rigged. And basically all you got to do is get the ballots to match what you got for your count. This has been a problem, and the Trump administration in the last election did work, or I should say the Trump campaign team in the last election did work with their base to get more people involved. And having been at CPAC with Chris, quite a few years ago now,
right? From Florida.
We met one lady from, I don't recall her name, but she was in the Republican committee or the Republican seat there. I don't remember her position exactly right now, but the point is, her thoughts were, don't volunteer for elections, sign up to get paid for elections, because now you're a worker. You want to be a worker in elections.
Right.
But the volunteers and the workers on the Republican side made a big difference to stop that sort of corruption where people were witnessing. And because they were working the elections, you had a little bit more say, a little bit more authority, and a little bit more contact, where if you see something nefarious happening or something going wrong, you can make a stink about it. You can report it. You can document it and put an end to it, more or less. So that was one strategy that kind of, I think, paid off in the 2024 election. I know people that did work elections. My wife did too, for that matter. So that helps, when Republicans get more greatly involved, because Democrats did have that strategy. I think the DNC did have that strategy that they're going to get their people working elections, and if they're going to cheat, they're going to have the leverage points to do so. When it comes to voter fraud, to somebody's point earlier about ICE doing its job, I don't think ICE has been doing a great job for what it can do. There's been a lot of obstruction from judges and other places,
right,
preventing that. Sean Duffy, Secretary of Transportation,
and was
attempting to collect CDLs so they can evaluate whether these were legal entries or illegal immigrants. And so ICE was working with, and a judge blocked that in several states. So, but there's still going to be a lot of illegal still in the country, and there's a possibility we still will be up against that. So, and that's why Todd and I, we're animate about keep saying, conservatives need to be more proactive and make sure you get out and vote. Above all, make sure you get your vote in, even if you have to take time off from work to do it. It's very, very important if we're going to achieve these goals, because Trump has really set up a lot of things. A lot of people don't give him the credit he deserves for what his administration's been doing these last couple of years. And if he continues to move forward, he's changing things for the better for this country. A lot of people say, well, he's not changing things. I mean, this is a new global, a new world order that he's creating. We're always going to be in global politics. 2,000 years ago, people were into, global trade. 2,000 years ago, people were, caravans and things like that, trade from China, porcelain, all these other things. People were always globally trading. So you're always going to have some sort of global order in the world. But the point is, in 2016, Trump said he was going to make sure the United States of America was first in this, not last, as the Democrats were placing us.
Right. Well, you got to think about it. Whenever you talk about global trade, you also have the lines of communication, right? The shipping lanes that have to be maintained, right? And who maintains them? Generally, militaries have to be able to maintain them, right? And now you have some nations closer to their shores have coast guards to help with that, But you're going to need actual navies out on the high seas, because of piracy is an actual problem in a lot of parts of the world. And also the fact you need to be able to rescue people that are out there. A lot of times, it's the stuff that don't make the news is a lot of times these ships get out there and they're dead in the water. Who's coming to the rescue? It's not a Coast Guard that can only go maybe 20 miles out to sea. You need an actual Navy that can go out there and assist in these situations.
Absolutely. That's one of the prime reasons we built the Navy we have today, right? I mean, it was the piracy and stuff. And, and with a strange degree of irony, weren't the Barbary pirates, weren't they Islamic? I mean, wasn't it somebody, what they call Imam or whatever, went to an African country and told these people you have the right to go out and pirate and raid and pillage, and they're infidels. You're better than them. Go get their wares, get their goods, and bring them back, and we'll all be rich.
Yeah, which is different than a privateer, by the way, which is essentially a contracted pirate with a legal warrant to go commit piracy. Back in the old days, Great Britain was notorious for that, or jolly old England. We're back to them. They would allow for privateers, but it was actually a way of protecting yourself, if you will. If you were captured, well, you're a privateer, not a pirate, so you're not subject to being hanged. You're subject to going to, say, an actual court martial.
It was legalized piracy is what it was.
Right.
So basically,
but it was a way of protecting. It was a way of protecting the individuals engaging in those activities.
Not necessarily. I mean, so say like, you know, the pirates of the time of the 1700s there with the pirates in the Caribbean areas and things like that.
Right.
Here in the colonies. That was all started out by profiteering, as you were talking about. It was the King of England, and you didn't raid the king's ships. You was raiding the French ships.
Right.
That's what he wanted. You were profiteering
yeah.
for the king to go raid
Right.
the French ships and weaken the French out and bring all the
And it's
boats back
funny
to the
is-
king, and you got a percentage.
That time period that we kind of mythologized was only a short period of time, really. It was like less than 10 years or something. It was really a short period of time. But you have all these great stories because of, you know, all these storybooks that were written about Blackbeard and this one and that one. And really, they were only out there for just a few years, really. It wasn't a long period of time like we think it was.
I think it was a little longer than 10 years, but you're right. It was a
It wasn't
relatively
long
short
at all,
period
really.
of time. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
It was basically a
And
decade
the
was
reason,
like the
the
heyday.
reason why it failed, honestly, the King of England didn't give a crap if you were out there pirating French ships or Spanish galleons or what you were doing. But when
He
they
wants the
started,
cut.
when they started pirate, no, it wasn't even that. They were pirates at that point in time. They weren't giving the king anything. But what does he care? He's not the defense for the French. He's not defense
No,
for
that's true.
for the Spanish.
That's true.
But these morons decided it was okay to raid the king's ships too. And that's when the king got involved, the King of England. That's when he got involved. He says, oh, no. You want to do the French, it was fine. But now you just raided my ships. We're coming out. And he did. They come after him.
Yes.
brutally.
Oh, you've stolen my gold. How dare you? Jolly good. You can have this. I don't know.
It wasn't the bloody gold. It was the tea.
Yeah, the tea. Yeah, it was. And it's funny is how we threw, you know, how we revolted over basically what amounts to a small tax, if you will. You know, nowadays, you know, we talked about you go out and buy a gallon of gas and look at how much taxes is on that 1 gallon of gas, for crying out loud. And we're not revolting. You know what I mean? In case our government becomes tyrannical, if this was, you know, 250 years ago, we'd be like, man, our government, you know, should have been overthrown decades and decades ago, or at least we should have had some sort of, I don't know, revolution, if you will.
Wow, we should have brought that up 20 minutes ago because there's a lot to cover right there.
I
'Cause
know,
think about what you just said. You know, we were
Next
colonists
show.
back then, right? We were separate from the king. Things were
Right.
happening that colonists
and a
were
lot-
crazy about.
most
And they were
of-
fed up with the dictates of the king, and much similar to what the barons did in the time of 1215 when we get to Magna
Right.
Carta. However, in modern day times, we're living in it. And we've been depleted throughout a long period of time. Like
Right.
1903, we were talking about the militia, and what the militia really meant prior to 1903, when they federalized the militia, made it the National Guard, it weakened us out as a society. So trying to stand up against these tyrannies today is a little more troubling and difficult to organize. However, militia still can be created, right? So
Right.
like here in New Hampshire, we do have what's called a state guard, which would be the local militia. We can create
Yeah.
that. We can develop new laws around that. And if we wanted to stand up against federal government tyranny, we'd have the means to do so. The problem is states are in bed with the federal government. So why would they do that?
Right. Everybody has their hand out, you know, one level or another. You know, local governments have their hand out for the state and federal government. States have their hand out for the federal government. It's sad.
Like a revolving door.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So, but there are things we can do as a people. There are legal channels we can use if we wanted to stand up against what's going on. You know, we've got to strategize these things. We can't
Right.
just sit there and go crying on social media. Ticks me off. I see all these people in these groups,
The
and their
experts,
Facebook
the
posts
experts.
or whatever. Well, no, they're just whining and crying. What an
Yeah.
outrage! The government did this. What an outrage! The government did that. Yes, but what are you going to do about it? You going to sit there and whine and cry about it, or are you going to stand up against it? Well, I'm informing people and I'm doing my duty. That does nothing. You're just a crybaby
Right.
at that point in time. If you're not going to stand up and do something, you just need to shut up.
Are you voting? And if you're voting for the same old person who's been in office, especially federal office, for, you know, a decade or more, you're probably voting for the wrong person.
Yeah, that's well, you need to evaluate those. I mean, we do have some
Right.
pretty good
not-
freedom caucuses and
that's
things that
not across the
evaluate
board.
members, and like
That's
here
not
we got
across the board.
citizens.
You know, but the
Yeah,
majority of
yeah.
people who've been in office for a long time, probably the wrong person.
Due diligence does count for something. We are running out of time. We got about 15 seconds left. So what do you think, Todd? You got anything else you want to close out
Tune
with?
in next week. Let's see if we have a guest next week. We may have a great guest. We don't know yet. So next week, 7 to 9 Eastern, right here. WSMN 1590 AM, 95.3 FM. John will give you the final word.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's our bit for tonight. We hope you got something out of it. Don't forget to join us again, same time, same place next week, 7 p.m. Wednesdays, as always. Good night and God bless.